It's my incredible privilege to be here today, and a big thank you to FICCI Frames for having me here to deliver this address. The topic for today is regulating the orange economy, or the creative universe, and it's not a new one, but it's certainly far more central today than it has ever been before. In a world where globalization seems to be slipping, cross-border access is increasingly constrained by geopolitical currents, supply chains are fragile, and regulations go beyond any one company or person's control. This is truly a difficult and challenging time. India's media and entertainment sector today is almost worth 30 billion. It's contributing around 0.7% of our GDP, and it's projected to grow at 7 to 8% annually. But nearly all of this is just domestic demand. So the question before us today is, what is it that it will take to grow this astronomically? Where and how will the next big leap come from? So two simple provocations here from me to frame this conversation for today. What is it that is stopping us from birthing an at-scale content behemoth, the Airtel or IPL of the entertainment world? Something for the world, something truly global in its quality and scale, but birthed in India, anchored in our stories. And second, how do we build an institutional framework that scales private investments into content in an unprecedented way, in the same way that has happened in other Indian industries like pharma or the IT services boom that we saw a couple of decades ago? What will it take to truly create a huge volley of content investments that can fuel creativity in every major Indian language? So simply put, how is it that we can create a Silicon Valley of creativity in India? Indian content has seen three great inflection points in the last 25 years this century, which was the first, KBC, launched at the turn of the century. First time anywhere in the world that a big game show had a Bollywood superstar as its face. The second was, of course, IPL itself, 2008. Cricket, first time ever, became truly family entertainment. And third is the wave of pan-India television and films, anchored in shows like Satyamev Jayate and Anupama, and films like Bahubali. Now the problem is that the last of these big noteworthy innovations happened 10 years ago. So for the last decade, we have been waiting for the next big leap in massive scale innovation that fans will truly root for and love. So why has this wait gone on for this long? And what is it that we can do sitting here in this room as we lead different companies to stop this, to bring in more change and at a rate faster than ever before? The first big part, I feel, for us is we need to be aggregating human capital. In his new book, The New Geography of Jobs, Enrico Moretti argues that how prosperous a region is increasingly today determined by innovation-driven industries and human capital. Regions that can attract and retain skilled workers, research activity, and high-tech or knowledge-based firms become prosperous hubs like the Silicon Valley. Now, the closest Indian model that I can think of, where truly human capital has been aggregated and a center of excellence has got created, is the Indian Premier League. This IPL has created, firstly, a really strong talent pipeline, local leagues, state-level leagues, under-19 teams, talent scouts, all of it in the service of building a great talent pipeline, and therefore every game in the IPL has a range of teams brimming with high-quality cricketers. Every season has at least 6 new names that a cricket fanatic like me has never heard of before. Now, this is years-round engagement. Global talent scouts going to far and away places looking for extraordinary talent, and then tons of money being thrown in to make them better, to get them to be truly world-class. This is the kind of ecosystem we need that will reach the most rooted, most authentic storytellers and enable them to craft stories which are good enough for the world. As a nation of 1.4 billion people, possessing the world's deepest, most vibrant and diverse cultural reservoir, our films, our music, and our digital creators should be watched, shared, and celebrated globally. We need to create an ecosystem today that identifies and nurtures this talent. And that's where India's answer to Squid Game or the next Lagan that is built here and goes and gets an Oscar nomination will get created. We don't have to wait decades for the next Lagan or for the next Bahubali. It should be happening every year. That's the scale of people, that's the scale of talent that this country possesses. And if we build the right ecosystems of talent, we can get this done. And there are now within our own country some incredible examples of this. The Malayalam film industry, certainly what they have created in the last half decade is one such. Just this last weekend, I had the privilege of watching Loka Chapter 1. No film has enthralled me as much as this film did after Bahubali. And it's not just about me and my creative pursuits. I am told that a movie that cost less than 30 crores has already done today a box office of over 300 crores. That is the kind of audience, that's the kind of commercial success that's possible. And Loka is not alone. It just comes on the back of string of great films. You know, you've had Avesham, before that you had 2018, you've had Manjumal Boys. Every year there are at least 2-3 such films that have been building up for a very long time. And Loka is just one more chapter in the evolution of a great ecosystem that has got built. And now the question is, how many more such can we build over the next few years? And therefore, a few steps we could be taking now to build this and grow this faster. First, we need to build creative institutions and centers of excellence that nurture talent. This means building institutions, recruitment pipelines, scouting organizations that bring the best of the best. And some effort the governments have been started making in this direction, which is fantastic. Second, we need to be building creative firms in close collaboration with these centers. There needs to be a continuous dialogue and a lot of deep participation between great centers of academic excellence and great businesses. And in India, we have to build that tradition. If there is Stanford University, that has to be built first and Silicon Valley will follow. And I think in India, we need to be building these connections very, very strongly. And finally, we've got to be building around a culture where regulation is firstly enabling and not restrictive in its frameworks. Globally, new tech is often allowed, is always largely flourished with a light touch. Creativity, paradoxically, is often overregulated through restrictions that constrain much more than they enable. Yet creativity is human capital at its purest. To unlock it, we must reimagine regulation itself. make it much more lighter, much more enabling, and truly future ready. If this is going to be a future-based industry which is built on foundations of creativity, why is the regulatory framework still anchored in a colonial era past? And too much of it still lingers in a world which is frankly outdated. To summarize, creative industries are no longer peripheral. They need to be central. They generate jobs, they fuel innovation, they export identity and imagination, and they amplify India's soft power. If India is to write the next chapter of global leadership, we must rely on creativity and technology both. We invest in creativity with the same boldness and vision that we are now beginning to invest around new technologies. So I invite you, policymakers, media leaders, and creators, to champion this agenda, to push boldly for reform, be experimental and open-minded around regulation. And let's think truly global in ambition. Let us together ensure that India's creative economy does not sit at the margins of policy, but stands at the very heart of our growth story. Thank you.
All the panelists, please proceed towards the stage. Vivan, please, over to you. I'm just repeating once more, we have with us Mr. Avinash Pandey, Secretary General of IBDF, Mr. Krishnan Kutty, Head of Entertainment South at JioStar, Mr. Anil Malhotra, Head Public and Regulatory Affairs at Z, and Mr. Yatin Gupta, Senior Vice President at GTPL Hathway.
Thank you. Thank you to also Gaurav Banerjee to raise the curtain on this panel, because the theme that we're dealing with is very expansive, and he's cast a very expansive canvas as well, because where the creative or orange economy starts and ends is increasingly unclear as all mediums of technology at the core are getting more and more creative, whether it's about creatively thinking about how to design a new silicon chip that will outdo the last one at the very frontier, or whether it is about telling a cutting-edge story somewhat differently than we have in the past. And I think finding our feet in terms of policy and regulation in the midst of painting this canvas is always a tough job, but no one better to start us off than Avinash Pandey, who's seen all facets of broadcasting, and now you're at the thick of it as the Broadcasting Federation Secretary General. Could you tell us a little bit, sir, about your initial explorations of how India has grappled with media and entertainment regulation in the past? What are some of the things that stand out for you as good experiments, some as bad, to kick us off?
Since the topic is orange economy, I don't know if you missed the morning session with Orange. It was actually very entertaining, and I hope that as industry body we continue to produce great entertainment content. If I look back, FICCI Frames started somewhere around 2002 or 2001. Since then, it has seen the passage of India through a great content creations, and as Gaurav Banerjee rightly pointed out, that probably the last innovation happened 10 years ago. And that's really bad. We need to look at as to what good things has happened, and what if we continue with that, then what could have happened. For example, in 1996, the then government gave filmmaking an industry a status. It is in 2004 and 5, if I'm not wrong, somewhere 2005, that the government started deregulating the distribution platform by asking them to go digital, right? So that reduced the bandwidth problem for the broadcaster. Then it also allowed us to do self-regulation of the content. After that, nothing much has happened. Now the government is regulating pricing of the channel that which you sell at, how you package it, how you distribute it. I think this will all, the benefit that we got in the first decade, or maybe a decade and a half, at the beginning when the government actually helped the industry to grow, the more and more regulation, which also Gaurav pointed out, is stifling the growth of the industry, and we must address that.
Krishnan, if we can turn it over to you, much of the deregulation emphasis is going to be linked inevitably to how we think about business models. You're a business head for South India, for the country's largest streaming platform. So clearly there's stuff that you feel is yet to be done. What are the business pressures that emanate from regulation that you think you could do without?
Look, I think as Avinash and Gaurav mentioned earlier, I think we are sitting and operating within an environment of 2005 where you had a single screen which dominated everything. I think right now all screens are competing with each other, and I think the rules which kind of restrict the television screen often don't restrict other screens. And so from a pure linear broadcasting perspective, there are times when you feel that you're probably playing this game a little bit with one hand tied behind your back. I think there are, a lot of things which we as broadcasters need to do better to make our content more engaging to consumers, to make to get advertisers on board. There are a lot of things which we need to do. But I think this very prescriptive approach which we have on the way channels have to be presented is a major constraint, which when there are inevitable challenges because of digital, it is accelerating some of those challenges.
But can I flip this around for you and give you the regulator's view perhaps? Because,
sure.
For instance, the TRAI is to enforce a dual mandate of orderly market growth and consumer welfare. And so they will say that it is in the interest of both these factors and not necessarily your sole business interests that the regulatory framework has been devised. How would you respond?
I think we've had an environment whenever you have free market pricing, whenever you had free market pricing, when you're not scared or fearful about what the next regulatory intervention is, competition will typically bring prices down lower rather than higher. And that is something which will happen. I think certainly, I hope my regulatory colleagues won't disagree with my view. I think the points around orderly growth perhaps are not being met. I think we are a business which needs some level of aid so that we continue to be a growing industry which continues to invest, because it's not only about a broadcaster. A broadcaster supports an entire ecosystem of production partners, craftsmen, and that entire ecosystem is potentially being put under some risk unless we have a more enabling regulatory environment.
Anilji, to turn it over to you, no one better than you to think through some of these distribution regulations, which is really what we're talking about. We're not talking so far about content regulations per se. We are talking about regulations that impinge distributors, distribution, and therefore content owners and monetization. But, how do you look at this entire chakra view that we find ourselves in, which started with this whole construct that, there has to be equity, and there are 3,000 distributors or 5,000, I don't know how many there were at the time when this whole thing started. Now there are much fewer, of course. How do we kind of get out of this, this conundrum?
The question is, Vivan, that how does this whole thing start? When we said in the morning, orange economy, past, present and future. So one thing is very clear. Technology always precedes the regulations. Regulations only come after the technology has come. If you look at our sector, cable television started in 1985, government regulated it 10 years later, 1995,
Iraq war
post
and
office registration for cable operators and MSOs came. 2005, they thought, okay, oh, there is a broadcasting also, so let us put up downlinking guidelines also. 2012, technology evolved, they said put digitization on, and TO3 came 7-8 years later. So always, once a technology has been developed, its impacts have been seen, regulations come. Problem today is that the legacy technologies are being controlled, regulated. But newer technologies which came 5 years back, your broadband started, the whole OTT regulation, OTT dominance and other technologies of social media, reels, etc. have started coming in our lives. Impacts are seen now. Regulations will come. And if government in its wisdom decides not to regulate the new technologies, they should deregulate the old legacy technologies or platforms, otherwise they will die down.
I'm sure this audience is not the first to hear that this should be done. What is the response that you get when you raise, or have you as a collective ever raised this prospect of deregulation along with the distributors to the regulator?
So I think regulator is right now discussing two aspects. To give forbearance to every technology, whether it is linear, digital, or come out with feather touch regulations, the light touch regulations, what we are talking about, they are still deliberating. There are talks of controlling social media, then there are talks of not controlling it. So regulator is right now, I think, going through a consultation process in their wisdom, despite when at your home, you see on a television screen content flowing out of a YouTube or an OTT or a linear platform. You can't differentiate from where this content is coming as a normal citizen until unless you know what service you have chosen from, what service you have chosen from which platform. A normal person cannot differentiate on the screen from where the content is flowing. So this is a paradox which government has to resolve. When we go and meet them, they are talking of feather touch regulations. They are also talking about forbearance to our sector, which is the legacy linear sector. They have not taken so far that decision. Like I said, they take time to regulate. If it has to be done, a deregulation has to be done, it will take its own time.
Yatinji, one of the, I think we have to sort of unpack at some stage on this panel the difference between content and carriage and how we take this regulatory view towards both, because I think somewhere this question of parity, it doesn't quite transcend both these facets equally. But we can come back to that. What I want to keep you to right now for your opening intervention is, one of the things that obviously the industry, the distribution industry that you represent here today is obviously thinking about is survival. And just like legacy content, like on television and with the broadcasters, the arguments that are being heard now increasingly are survival arguments. They're no longer what Gaurav was saying about, world-beating sort of. We're not saying that our television channels will transcend the world. We're not saying that our distributors will become, global distributors in any way. The Comcasts and all are not going to arise from this distribution ecosystem. So it's very much a survival conversation. And what I want to ask you is, in this kind of an environment of scarcity, in a sense, how do you innovate your way out of this? What are the pathways and what are the policy supports, policy measures that can support you?
Thank you for asking that. So I'll take it from what Anilji mentioned. When the regulations evolved over a period of time, 2004 is when TRAI was brought in, and TRAI was typically a telecom regulator. He was given the additional responsibility of broadcasting with the intention that over the next few years, a broadcast regulator would come in, who would be a specialized body for broadcasting, not just an add-on. That unfortunately has not happened, because of which probably there is a lesser focus on broadcasting than on telecom. So telecom has evolved. You've seen what has happened over a period of the last 2 decades. we've gone from paying 64 rupees per minute as outgoing call to paying nothing today. Similarly, there has not been enough that the regulator has done over the last couple of decades on this. Now coming to what is currently affecting and what can be done for survival and growth. The first and foremost, again, I'll take a lead from what Anilji mentioned. There are multiple platforms today. There are platforms which are running unregulated, while the linear television industry is completely regulated. From the distributor side, we are even more regulated than what a broadcaster is. While we are two stakeholders in the same ecosystem, broadcaster still has the control of what he wants to price his channel at, how he wants to monetize it. While on the platform side, the revenues for a distribution platform operator have completely been regulated down to the extent of dictating that this is what you can charge at a maximum for carriage, this is what you can charge at a minimum. That's it. So we don't have the leeway to actually innovate to that extent. Having said that, there is enough scope. Distributors today are cable operators, they are also ISPs, they have the broadband networks. They are still reaching those households. The numbers, of course, are very varying. We were sitting at about 150 million 6-7 years back. Today the industry is quoted as
111 million pay today.
It's quoted by different people at different numbers. 100 million odd is what people are talking about. Free dish all of a sudden has come out from being zero to claiming to be a 50-60 million at a time. Actually no numbers because it does not have even a comparative regulatory framework. It's
So on these differentiated platforms, what is your mantra?
So I think going forward, aggregation is going to be the key for platforms. The platforms will have to offer multiple services, including cable television, which is the linear form of television. They will also have to offer broadband. They will also have to offer maybe OTT services, content, which is a lot of content is available in the regional languages, which is not probably going on to the national channels or the satellite channels. So there is a scope there also. And there are a lot of associated services that can be delivered through the same people.
Okay, so I want to turn it over and now we're going to go non-linearly, just based on what the previous person has said. Krishnan, if I can bring you in on his contention on distribution being squeezed and not the content side. Do you agree, firstly, because you're looking at the business of content? And secondly, do you think the consumer is looking for this kind of vast menu of options and choices and so on and so forth, sitting and accessing the television screen or the mobile screen or whatever screen?
I don't think we should have a conversation of who's getting squeezed more. I think we can just agree that, look, I think there is no ask from us that the distributors need to be regulated and we don't need to be regulated. I think the larger ask of the industry is for light touch regulation across the ecosystem, and that really is what we're looking. Could you just repeat the second part of your question, please?
Is the consumer also looking at this aggregation?
I think. Look, what have we learned over the last? What have we learned over the last few years? So look, we often get quoted that consumers want to watch 10 channels. Okay, but what are those 10 channels? Now within a household, the 10 channels which the father wants to watch, the mother wants to watch, and the children want to watch may be different. I think most importantly, a freewheeling regulation which offered a large bouquet of channels at reasonable prices really allowed a lot of new channel businesses to innovate and drive, and also allowed a very, very thriving cable and DTH ecosystem. I think the fact is that what have we learned over the last decade? Consumers' appetite for content is almost immeasurable. So for anybody else to have a prescriptive view that you actually only need to watch 8 channels is ridiculous, because because we know that people's appetite for content is, as screens have proliferated, the volume of content which consumers have watched has dramatically grown. So I don't think there is a restriction on appetite for content. So I don't know whether any worldview should set out by saying on average people watch 9 channels. I think it is not the most appropriate signal in terms of making some of these policy decisions.
Anil, you want to add to that? Also, I have a follow-up question, which is that why is it so difficult still to choose channels?
So Vivan, first of all, taking a word from where Yatin left.
So if you can raise the
Yeah.
mic.
I think what is important as a mantra for regulatory and policy affairs, there should be uniformity and parity between the platforms. You can't simply ignore the fact that when Cable Act was being amended, it was a criminal offense under the Section 4 of Cable Act to send any unencrypted signal. And 500 meters away from the parliament where the act was enacted, Doordarshan was beaming all the channels unencrypted. Now that has created a huge disparity to the platforms. That one platform has no regulation, no pricing, and it competes with the platform in an unfair manner, charging a carriage fee for that, that purpose. They charge upward of 20 crore rupees, where the platform are restricted that they can't charge carriage more than 50 lakh rupees, 60, now 60. So this disparity is creating not only an imbalance, but confusion. So you don't want to regulate the digital platforms, don't regulate. But allow linear platforms also a forbearance or a level playing field at least so that they can compete. I think that's one thing which government and the regulator has to understand and act swiftly. They can't wait for 5 more years to decide what to do, whether to still keep OTT in free domain and keep on regulating linear. It will kill linear.
Just adding to that.
Please go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just interrupting you. So you look at the numbers today. We talked about 100 million odd cable homes, cable and DTH homes, but that are on linear television, which will translate to around 500 million viewers. There are 600 million viewers on YouTube every month. There are people who are subscribing to pay OTT platforms, which are close to about 120 million upwards as far as one of the figures that I read. That again multiplies based on the number of subscriptions that you've got. You've got fast television today, free ad-supported television, which is available through connected TVs and applications. Estimates of connected TVs is about 45 to 50 million today. So, and you're talking about an industry which has been around for 35 years, being at 100 million, an industry which has been around for 2 years, being at 50 million already. And you're not willing to regulate the new industry because it is too new. Either, like Anilji said, either you remove regulations from all aspects or you bring some amount of regulatory reforms.
Yeah, so Avinash as the consensus builder.
No, so what I'm saying is that we all get together here in FICCI frames every year and talk the same topic, forbearance. At least 10 years I have heard. Nothing much has changed, rather the more regulations have come. You know, I am going to ask you audience question. There were a lot of people interested in movie. When I was student, I used to bunk my classes and watch a movie of James Bond to Amitabh Bachchan in 5 rupees. Single theater, right? Today, you have a different pricing for a single screen to multiplex to one movie to another movie. And that's what has led to the growth of the Bollywood, because they could tell different stories differently. Today, as a broadcaster, if anybody goes and acquire an IPL or an Asia Cup or a KBC format or etc., you have to sell at the same price that you are selling a local football match. Is it viable? I mean, it's basic common sense. We are talking about, I'm earnestly believing that the regulator actually feel the same thing that all of us in the industry feel. The industry has to grow. But what we are doing is exactly the opposite. This is what is killing the industry. No regulator. I was in a function which is partly funded by Government of India. The Malaysian and Indonesian regulators were there. along with the our regulators, and they were surprised. You guys regulate pricing? No one does it. No industry it happens. Why as an industry body we have not been able to convince that, forbearance, you in the name of consumer protection want to protect the lowest cable operator? Fine. You can give subsidy like you are giving subsidy of ration. But that's not ration for entertainment, It's a free market. It's a private capital.
Okay, Avinash, but a follow-up question to that is that, again, I'm playing the devil's advocate here. That the regulator may say, but you say you're feeling the pinch of these economic regulations, but you're so large. And there are few large operators and everyone else is small, and look at them, they're giving free to air and surviving, and everyone should be able to pursue creativity in the same way. What would be your response to that?
See, you used a word organized growth, something like that.
Orderly.
Orderly growth. That's a typical Soviet era line, that, I want you to grow, but I want to control how you grow. That's not the way the world works. Our technology companies have done wonders, and somebody pointed out, I think Anil pointed out, they grew until the government realized, there is an industry, we need to regulate. And NASSCOM came and told the government, let's stay aside because otherwise we'll not grow. Same thing happened with us. We had a flourishing cable business. Government says, I need to regulate cable. Then they realize, there is a broadcasting, we need to regulate that. And what has happened after that is a long story. What we are saying that, look, let the market forces play. It is not your job to make sure a shoe company survives or not. Or this particular hotel survives or not. Close by one hotel, big hotel, 5-star hotel closed down. Government did not come to save that hotel. Why they are interested in saving any cable operator or any TV channel? Now I'm talking about a small TV channel. I spent my entire life in news industry. A small news channel which does not have a regular revenue basis, the government through its own DTH operation is asking 15 crore, 20 crore to pay. Are you protecting small operators? No. That's the fact.
Absolutely. If we can turn it over back to you, Yatin, because a lot of this, again, just like small and large, the arguments that float around the regulators' corridors are also about the small and large and the distribution landscape. And I think it's fair to say that, and we were talking about this earlier, with things like digital and artificial intelligence now, a lot of people will have to reinvent how they think about their work, how these distributors are going to pivot from the traditional distribution to, like you said, ISPs and triple play and so on and so forth, is one aspect of it. But, how does that reskilling, retooling, upgradation happen at a small institutional level? That is an open question. I don't know how this cohort is managing. Do you have any insights? And what is this kind of policy support they may need to really survive? Because, when TCS lays off 20,000 people, it's headlines for a week in India. And everyone is very bothered about what's going to happen to the future of Indian IT, which we should rightly be bothered about. But there are as many people, if not more, in the distribution and broadcast ecosystem as there are in the IT ecosystem. And most of them, as you said, are middle-aged and perhaps unwilling to really do something transformational. How do we address this?
So we've also been trying to figure it out on what we can get the cable operators to do. Now, typically, like I said earlier, the cable operators they're the first generation entrepreneurs, most of them. Typically middle-aged now. They've been in the business for 25 to 30 years or maybe more. They started off with maybe one small lane in one particular town or city. And today they're maybe slightly larger than that, but they're still restricted to a particular town or city. For them, the subscriber base has gone down in the pay universe, and that's again because of various technologies that have come in, whether it's OTT or fast or free dish. I'm not getting into that. Now, for them to reskill is an effort, and that effort needs to be taken just not by one particular stakeholder. It has to be right from the government to each of the stakeholders, bringing in some amount of expertise and knowledge that can be shared with them to reskill them, to show them the opportunities that they are still sitting on. So if they are operating today with, let's say, an average of 500 subscribers, they know in and out about those 500 households. What else can they provide to those 500 households as services?
Yes, absolutely. And if there is resilience to be found in businesses, it is very much in the human connection that we have to exercise as we go about our individual professions. We have very little time left. Krishna, I know you have something to say, but let's go across the panel, starting with you, Anilji, as Yatanji has already talked about some future foresight. In the future, 10 years from now, does the television industry exist? What form does it take? What regulations are in effect?
I'll just give you a snapshot of what is happening in linear side of business, the television so-called industry. We have around 800 channels. I don't know how many of them are news and how many are struggling to survive. I think Avinash ji can tell you better. We have 125 million YouTube channels being beamed in the country. Right? No control. You want to start a channel, you need lot of permissions, and if it is a news channel, lot of security clearances also, huge amount of deposits to be made to Government of India. But you want to start a YouTube channel, do nothing, hire a room, take a camera and upload the channel. Now, under these circumstances, it is very difficult that in the current situation, what will be the shape of the future television industry? It is, I would say, unpredictable right now.
Krishnan, is television really competing with streaming head-on, or are these differentiated ways in which people are watching, consuming content? And also, you know, with this increasing fragmentation happening across these platforms, obviously some element of competition comes in from there. How do you address that in going forward?
I think, honestly, from my organization's point of view, we are moving into a world where we're agnostic across screens. You know, we want to provide consumers content, you know, across a television screen, a connected TV, or a mobile screen. So, you know, over time, what is that eventual business model going to be is something we need to figure out. But we are agnostic across screens. We have a robust linear business. We are building a strong digital business. We are agnostic across screens in terms of how consumers consume content, honestly.
Finally, to you, Avinash, before you give us your last words of wisdom, okay. You know, to a lot of what the panelists have said today, that there are differences in how we regulate within a set of platforms or distribution services, across different types of distribution services, and so on and so forth, and how we receive something on television ultimately is somewhat uniform, and so on and so forth. But in saying all of this, we are also making the case that there should be obviously a level playing field and regulation of new actors. The government may turn around and tell you that, look, you have told us your sob story and you've ended up where you have. Why are you preventing us from taking a light touch approach to new age actors? Why don't you take a leaf out of their book and become somewhat like them? And thankfully in India, we've seen a lot of industry transformation happening, whether it is distributors becoming ISPs, whether it is broadcasters investing in streaming and therefore giving stiff competition to global players. What is your mantra in the way that you will make these arguments going forward?
So since you have asked my wisdom, so I'll speak in that sense only, okay? Now, you live in Delhi?
Yes.
Okay, I'll give you an example. In Delhi, this is the season of getting pollution.
Yes.
Same number of vehicles runs in Delhi in month of November, December as in January, March. But because you can't catch those guys who are creating pollution, so you catch the car owners saying that you don't drive your car. Easy catch, right? Administration always try to administer something which is easier to catch, like we are all sitting here, broadcasters. Not the millions of content creators who are doing this in the small garage in Noida, right? The problem is this, that you have to decide that, look, At the end of the day, if I have to thrive this economy on the creative side, the art of storytelling has to completely kept out of regulation, and that is doable. Government also wants to do it. I think somewhere the content creators, broadcasters, and the government official has to sit together saying that where do we see ourselves in 2050? To your last question, television is going to survive. It is still the cheapest medium to deliver a high quality entertainment content. At the same time, millions of people, family watching together. There are still 100 million people who does not have access to television. Bihar has completely escaped the television directly from newspaper to mobile. It has graduated. So there is a lot of scope to work. 10 years from now, television will still be thriving. Digital economy will be thriving. We all be producing content for our TV as well as digital.
Either you or your artificial intelligence agent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
By the way, this Time's Up was started when we started speaking too. So it is still there.
That's unfair
That's
regulation.
a perpetual stream today. I
Thank
think
you very
we are
much,
running late.
gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the session, sir. And